Hi everybody, Toni Reavis along with Josh Cox at Universal Studios with a recap of the 2012 Berlin Marathon, set up as a world record attempt by Kenya's Geoffrey Mutai. And Josh, during the broadcast, you talked about the 3 C's which are necessary for a world record to happen.
That's
those
right.
Being, and they were all in place.
Course, competition, and conditions. The course, Berlin serves it up in spades. The last 4 world records have been set on this course. For a world record to be set, everything has to be perfect. Little to no wind, temperatures hovering just below 50, right around 50. And if there was a 4C, one that is all about execution once that gun goes off, is conserving energy. It's not just hitting the splits, but it's how you hit the splits, running that even pace and preserving that all-important fuel that's needed that last 10K.
Right, and all those C's were in position. So Mutai was perfectly situated to get that record. Now remember, Geoffrey Mutai was snubbed for the Kenyan Olympic Marathon team in London because he dropped out of this April's Boston Marathon under sweltering conditions. As I said, what can anyone learn from a 90-degree marathon? Nothing. It proved that he can't run in the heat. Well, there wasn't going to be any heat in Berlin. It was 49 degrees at the start, 55 degrees at the finish. 4 pace setters did their job. In fact, they went out a little bit conservatively compared to last year's record attempt, where Patrick Macau did set the standing record of 2:03:38. But I'd rather be erring on the first half than the second half.
Yeah, if you're going to mess up the split in any direction early on, it's better to be a little bit slower and then work your way into it. Warm up a little bit, and that's exactly what they did. And they needed to get back on pace, but they didn't panic. The Pacers didn't go, okay, we have to make up this 20-second gap in the next 5K. They did it slowly, and really it was on the back half of the course.
Right. They ran the first 5 kilometers in just under 15 minutes. It was the slowest 5K of the entire race. Last year, Patrick Macau ran just under 50 minutes for his last 5K of the race, and that's where we thought that there was time left to be taken out in the record because of the way Macau ran the race last year. Got into a sort of a competition with Haile Gebrselassie from Ethiopia, who was then the world record holder from the 2008 Berlin. They got into a fight between 25 and 30K, and that very fast 5K split there is what slowed Macau in the last 5K. So if you didn't get into competition until very late rather than in the middle, maybe the world record was going to be in jeopardy, and that's the way it seemed in this race today.
Yeah, absolutely. Last year we saw it because they got their eyes off the clock and onto each other, and when you start competing against each other and not against the clock, it's such a fine line when you're going for this world record. Now this world record, once we got under 2:04, it was such a fine line that you had to stay within, with the 5-kilometer splits, with the halfway splits, and to get in a tussle like he did last year with Geb. That's why we thought, hey, there's some room here. That tussle ended up having him slow over the last 5K, and today, with the main contenders at the end being training partners with Kometo and Mutai, they were able to work together.
Last year, it was Patrick Mutai by himself with the Rabbits, then alone after 30 kilometers. This year, there were still 4 contenders and 2 Rabbits when the Rabbits departed at 30K. But that's when Mutai downshifted and for the first time turned it into a race. And then from 30 to 35K, that's when the real damage was done. But in the end, it might have been that damage during that 5K split which cost him the record by 34 seconds, as it turns out.
Well, and we saw the move, and when he made the move, we thought, okay, this is the Mutai we know. This is the Mutai we love, because that's exactly what he did last year in New York City through the hills of Central Park, where he led the entire podium under the previous course record. He ran last year in Central Park, after mile 20, he ran 13:35. That's 4:31 average. That's fast if you're going out to run a 5K. I mean, that'll win majority of 5Ks out there. And when he put the hammer down, he did it in impressive fashion, and he continued to obliterate that course record. And that's what we thought we were seeing here, because when they were behind, and all of a sudden they put the hammer down where it was just him and his training partner Kometo left, and we thought, okay, he's right there. They were only, 7 seconds off or so.
At 35 kilometers, they were 7 seconds off the record. Now, they wanted to go through 61:40 for the half marathon split and then run a negative split, second half faster than the first. That was their plan. But they went through the half in 62:12, about 30 seconds off of that. Last year, the record split 61:43. But if he could have been the Joffrey Mutai of Boston 2011, course record by 2 minutes and 47 seconds, fastest time ever run on any course, but it was wind blown point to point with a slight elevation drop, which is the Boston route, making it ineligible for record purposes. If he would have been that guy, and then the guy that broke the New York record by 2 minutes and 35 seconds, and been the closer he would have been, we would have had a new world record. The problem is, he got a stomach issue in that last 7 kilometers, and we were saying on the broadcast, it doesn't look like his legs have a problem, but there was no drive.
There wasn't. You kept waiting for the moment when he shifted and said, okay, now's the time when I separate and blow this guy out the back door and stake my claim at this world record. And I thought he was going to do it because he looked so controlled when they were 7 seconds off. It's like, now you're poised, and if you can get to that point, the way that if you would have told me before this race started, they're going to get to this point with Mutai looking the way that he looks, comfortable. He showed nothing on his face. Everything looked good. There were no chinks in the armor, so to speak, but he never made that final drive, and it was because of the stomach issue.
Right, and then the real question was, of course, the sidebar story in today's race was with his win in Boston and New York last year. He had 50 World Marathon Major points. The end of the cycle comes at the end of the New York City Marathon, November 4th. Whoever has the most points wins a $500,000 bonus. Well, Mutai had his fate in his hands. If he won in Berlin, he sewed up the World Marathon title and the $500,000 bonus that went with it. He had his training partner, Dennis Cometto, in his debut marathon on his shoulder the whole way. Now, Cometto was the Berlin Half Marathon champion this year. He was also the Berlin 25K champion this May, where he set a world 25K record. He loves Berlin. He trains with Mutai, knows how strong he is. But in the final kilometers, when Mutai was sort of suffering with that stomach issue, Cometto did not make a move to beat his man. And the question is, do you think that was done on purpose?
Was there a buddy system in place here? And, I got to think, yeah, there was. I mean, I don't know what would have happened if Cometto would have came up on his shoulder. If something, you don't know what you have inside until you're forced to show it. And had Cometto gone to the front, maybe they had the gentleman's handshake before. If he would have gone, maybe Mutai would have responded, maybe something. But it wasn't as if Cometto was going to make the 500 if he beat him. He would only be taking 500 away from his training partner, his friend, the guy that took him under his wing and said, hey, come train with me. It's Mutai's camp. I mean, and he's one of his apprentices, if you will, that he's brought along, and certainly has all the pedigree in the world. And I think we've seen, the door open up to another great marathoning career here.
But we've seen this before as well in the World Marathon Majors. Hunt, in 2007, the first cycle for the World Marathon Majors, we came to the Boston Marathon, where Robert Chariot from Kenya was going for one of his 4 Boston Marathon wins. And if he had won that race, he was going to sew up the World Marathon Majors title. His training partner, James Quamby, was with him in the final miles. For those of you who know the Boston Marathon route, you go over the Mass Turnpike in the final, heading into Kenmore Square with 1 mile to go. There's an aid station right on that little bridge, not a hill, little hump going over an overpass. And Quamby went to get water almost casually, almost leisurely. Chariot got about a 10-meter advantage, and Quamby never tried to close the gap. And at the end, you said, well, it seemed obvious that Quamby was not going to take $500,000 away from his training partner. And this is also what seemed to be the case here in Berlin. So the question becomes, is there a flaw in the World Marathon Majors system as it's presently constructed?
It's tough to say, because it's great that they have the prize out there, that they have this series of races, which our sport desperately needs, and there's some sort of cohesiveness and something, the tie that binds all of these great races together. It's fantastic. But you look at this and you see there's no, you look at the times and you go, oh, that must have been a fabulous sprint finish. Wow, 1 second apart. I can't wait to see the replay. And then you'd watch it and go,
they were just sort of,
hey, let's just cross this line here.
Finishing up a regular Sunday run.
Right.
Well, anyway,
that's what it looked like.
And just so you know, there was Aberu Kebede, the 2010 women's champion of Berlin, won her second title in 2:20.30, a 3-second personal best to win her second Berlin title. But it was all in play. It was a great race, a great day in Berlin for the 39th running of one of the great marathons in the world. For Josh Cox, Toni Reavis from Universal Sports. See you next time.